Okay, this is lesson 1.4 on integers and absolute value. This is a very important concept as you get higher in mathematics. So let's get to it. So anytime you see this word integer, all students get messed up. Right? It's a simple integer, and all it means is a positive and negative counting number. Right? So when we look at it, all of these numbers on a number line are your counting numbers, and each of these tick marks represents an integer. Now, an integer is not a decimal or fraction, it's just the, positive and negative counting numbers. Now, what we can do is we can graph these integers on a number line. And we graph them by just plotting a dot on the integer you are graphing. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. So if we want to graph -1, 4, and -5 on the number line, here we have our number line, okay? And all we're going to do is go to -1, plot a dot, 4, plot a dot, and -5, and plot a dot. And the nice part about graphing these is it allows us to compare the numbers and order them. So if we wanted to order these from least to greatest, all we do is we go from left to right and read them in order. So -5 is the smallest, -1 is in the middle, and 4. Okay, so do the you try on your own and come back and check your answer. So now we want to graph 0, then 2, -6, 5, and -8. So again, we're going to go there. We're going to plot the numbers 0, 2, -6, 5, and -8. Now that we have these plotted, now we can order them very easily from least to greatest. So -8, -6, 0, 2, and 5. And this would be in order from least to greatest. Now, you can probably order those without plotting them, but we are going to use more plotting later on, so it's important to be able to, understand how to plot them. So next, we're going to talk about opposites and absolute value. They kind of go hand in hand. Opposites are basically numbers that are on that are the same distance from 0 on the number line, but in opposite directions. So if this is 0, right? If I look at it, 4 and -4 are opposites. Because if I go to 4 on the number line and I go to -4 on the number line, if you look at this, the distance on the left is 4 units and the distance on the right is 4 units. So we say they're opposites because they're equidistant from 0 on the number line. Now, that brings us to absolute value. Okay? Absolute value is a distance from 0 on the number line. Now, when we talk about distance, right? We talk about distance is always going to be positive. So since distance is always positive, the absolute value of any number is always going to be positive. Now the symbol for absolute value is these two bars. Okay, so let's take a look at what absolute value is and how to evaluate it. So what we're going to do here is use a number line to find the absolute value of -3 and absolute value of 3. So if I go to -3 on the number line, okay, we say the absolute value of 3 is 3 because it's 3 units away from 0 on the number line. So we always look at absolute values being distance from 0. We say the absolute value of 3, right? If I go to 3 on a number line, that distance is always also 3. So the absolute value of 3 is also going to be 3. So although we define it as the absolute value is the distance away from 0, right? The absolute value of any number is always going to be positive because distance is always positive. So if we had to write the absolute value of -10 in words, we would say the distance from 0 is 10 units. Therefore, the absolute value of -10 would just be 10. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to simplify some expressions here and then move right along. So anytime we simplify an expression, we want to get rid of the absolute value bars. So what is the absolute value of 25? It's just going to be 25. The absolute value of -35. Remember, absolute value is always positive, is 35. The absolute value of -54 is 54. The absolute value of 45 is just 45. Notice how it's always going to be positive. But now here we go. If I look at this, this is negative absolute value of 60. So if the if I look at this, this is like doing -1 times the absolute value of 60, which means I'm going to simplify the absolute value of 60, which is 60, and then I'm going to multiply it by -1. So this would be -60. Remember that negative's on the outside, so we're basically doing the opposite of the absolute value. So here we say it's -1 times the absolute value of -15 is 15, and -1 times 15 is -15. So the absolute value of -15 is 15, but when we take the opposite or multiply by -1, it becomes -15. Now, one thing I do want to say is if I'm doing numbers like 4 minus 2, the absolute value of this, I must simplify what's inside first. 4 minus 2 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is now 2. Okay. So let's go and begin comparing the numbers using inequalities or equal sign. Anytime we say the word inequalities, we mean less than or greater than, and then obviously equals to. So remember, the more negative, the smaller it is. So what is bigger? All right, -8 or 0. If I look at it, I always want the alligator to eat the bigger number. So we're going to put the less than symbol in here to say -8 is less than 0. Okay. 4 and -25, which one is bigger? 4. So the alligator should be eating 4, and we say 4 is greater than -25. Now, -9 and -2. If we were to plot this on a number line, here's 0, here's -2, here's -9. Which one is further to the left of 0, right? -9 is, so -9 is less than -2. Okay, here we have the absolute value of -1. If we simplify this, we would get 1. The absolute value of 50 is 50, and obviously 1 is less than 50. Then the absolute value of -6 is 6. The absolute value of -12 is 12, and obviously 6 is less than 12. Here we have absolute value of 10 is 10. The absolute value of -10 is 10. What do we know about these? They are equal. Here we have the opposite of the absolute value of -30. So when we do -1 times the absolute value of 30 is 30. -1 times 30 is -30. The absolute value of -60 is 60. And we're going to say -30 is less than 60. So move on to the last part. Write an expression to represent each quantity. All right, example 1, a loss of 1/3 of an investment of D dollars. Okay, since we're losing 1/3 of an investment, all right, the third of the investment is 1/3 times D. Remember, of means multiplication, right? And it means multiplication of a fraction. So 1/3 times D is what you lost, but we have to make it negative 1/3 D because it's what we lost. And anytime you go down, it's negative. Example 2 here, N degrees Fahrenheit above R degrees room temperature. Okay, so what would that be? If it's R degrees right now, if it's N degrees Fahrenheit above that, we would go ahead and add the N. So it would be R plus N degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, now if it was below 0, we would say negative. So anytime, we're below 0, we're getting into the negatives. All right, go ahead, do the reteaching worksheet, then the practice worksheet, and send them to me. All right, have a good night.